The Greek Derby of Death, a tragedy of the elephant, the whale, and human folly, 431 to 404 BCE. In the 5th century BCE, after accomplishing the incredible feat of uniting to kick the massive Persian Empire back where it came from, the Greek world entered a dazzling golden age. It was a lavish party of intellect and art, where democracy, philosophy, drama, and architecture flourished like flowers in spring, especially in the city of Athens. But like any party that goes on for too long, beneath the surface of prosperity and eloquent speeches, a deadly fault line was widening. That crack split the Greek world into two rival power blocks, like two heavyweight boxers staring each other down from opposite corners of the ring. The inevitable confrontation between the two most powerful city-states, Athens and Sparta, finally ignited the Peloponnesian War. This was not a conventional war of the let's meet in an open field, have one battle and go home variety. No, this was a total conflict, a fratricidal civil war that lasted nearly 3 decades. A seismic shock that shook the very foundations of Hellenic civilization. It was a great tragedy in the truest Greek sense. A story of pride bordering on arrogance, boundless ambition, and spectacular self-destruction. The two giants and a bipolar world, when democracy meets iron discipline. To understand why these Greek brothers decided to slaughter each other so enthusiastically, one must first understand the nature of the two main opponents. They were polar opposites, like day and night, fire and water, a wild party and a solemn military parade. Athens, the first giant, was the embodiment of sea power, commerce, and something called democracy. Athens was the Silicon Valley of the ancient world, innovative, wealthy, open, and utterly convinced of its own superiority. After the Persian Wars, Athens founded the Delian League, a naval alliance with a noble-sounding initial purpose of common defense. However, with the most powerful navy in Greece at its command, Athens quickly turned this league into its own personal empire. The League became a polite word for a protection racket. Its allies were effectively vassals, forced to contribute money and ships to the Athenian treasury. Any attempt to secede was brutally crushed by the Athenian fleet. The immense wealth from these mandatory membership fees poured into Athens, funding the construction of magnificent structures like the Parthenon and nurturing a radical democracy where every male citizen, not slaves, not women, not foreigners, had the right to participate in governance. Athens was a noisy, dynamic, ambitious society that believed it was the center of the universe. Sparta, the other giant, was the master of the land, a closed-off and radically conservative military society. Located deep in the Peloponnesus Peninsula, Sparta's strength came from its hoplite army. Heavy infantry, human tanks considered invincible on land. The entire Spartan society was organized as a 24/7 military training camp, from the cradle to the grave. Every boy born was destined to become a perfect warrior. They were taught to despise luxury, to speak in clipped, concise sentences, laconic speech, and to value discipline, honor, and absolute loyalty to the state above all else. Sparta led the Peloponnesian League, a club of tough, conservative guys, comprising land-based city-states that shared its oligarchic ideology. They looked upon Athens with a mixture of fear and contempt, viewing its democracy as the chaotic rule of the mob, a depraved hippie commune. The Greek world was split into two poles. On one side was the Athenian Empire, the whale that ruled the seas. On the other was the Spartan League, the elephant that dominated the land. The great historian Thucydides, who lived through and chronicled the entire war with astonishing objectivity, diagnosed the deepest cause of the war as the rise of Athens and the fear that this inspired in Sparta. It was an incurable disease called jealousy and fear. The spark, a series of adding fuel to the fire events. The tension that had been simmering for years finally boiled over into open conflict through a domino effect of bad decisions, each one a new spark. The Corcyra affair. The city-state of Corcyra, a major naval power, was in conflict with its mother city, Corinth, an extremely important ally of Sparta. Corcyra, in its moment of need, sent a friend request to Athens. Athens, though hesitant, decided to accept, but with limited involvement, sending a small fleet for observational and defensive purposes. This act, however small, was seen by Corinth and Sparta as a blatant trespass into their sphere of influence, like your rival suddenly showing up in your backyard. The Potidaea affair. This was a complicated custody battle. Potidaea was both a colony of Corinth and a tribute-paying member of the Athenian Empire. Fearing Potidaea would revolt under the instigation of its birth mother Corinth, its stepfather, Athens, demanded the city tear down its walls. Potidaea refused and rebelled, the Megarian decree. To punish the city-state of Megara, another Spartan ally, Athens issued a comprehensive economic embargo. This was a devastating economic blow, banning Megarian merchants from all ports within the vast Athenian Empire, designed to economically suffocate Megara. This act enraged Sparta's allies, who felt Athens was using its economic muscle to bully everyone. Facing pressure from its allies, Sparta issued an ultimatum to Athens. Pericles, the brilliant and proud leader of Athens, persuaded the citizen assembly to refuse. He believed that even the slightest concession would be seen as weakness and would only encourage Sparta to demand more. War was inevitable. In 431 BCE, the Spartan army invaded Attica. The 27-year-long war had begun. Phase 1, the Archidamian War, 431 to 421 BCE. The whale versus the elephant. The first phase of the war was a classic confrontation between two completely different strategies, a duel between the elephant and the whale. Sparta's strategy, the elephant. King Archidamus II of Sparta employed a traditional strategy. Every summer he would lead his army to invade Attica, burning fields and farms. They hoped to provoke the Athenians, forcing them to come out and fight a decisive land battle where the Spartan hoplites would surely win. Essentially, their strategy was to punch the air, destroying things Athens had already chosen to abandon. Pericles' strategy, the whale. Pericles knew that a direct confrontation with Sparta on land was suicide. He persuaded the Athenians to execute a daring plan, abandon the entire countryside, and withdraw everyone inside the long walls, a massive system of fortifications connecting Athens to its port of Piraeus. Athens would become an island on the mainland, living entirely off supplies from its naval empire. While Sparta was busy burning empty barns, the Athenian fleet would raid the coasts of the Peloponnesus, like a giant whale constantly nibbling at the elephant's flanks. Pericles believed it was a war of attrition, and that Athens, with its deep treasury, would win. However, Pericles' brilliant strategy created an epidemiological time bomb. In the second year of the war, a horrific plague broke out within the overcrowded, cramped, and unsanitary city. The disease wiped out nearly a third of the population, including Pericles himself. His death left a massive leadership vacuum. Hawkish, demagogic politicians like Cleon rose to power, pushing for a more brutal war policy. Despite this, Athens held on. They even scored a stunning psychological victory in 425 BCE at Sphacteria, where an Athenian force besieged and captured 120 elite Spartan warriors. The fact that Spartans, warriors said to never surrender, threw down their arms was a shocking event throughout Greece. It shattered their myth of invincibility. In response, the brilliant Spartan general Brasidas conducted a masterful campaign in the north, capturing the vital Athenian colony of Amphipolis. In the battle to retake the city, both Cleon and Brasidas, the two most aggressive warhawks on both sides, were killed. Their deaths paved the way for peace. In 421 BCE, the Peace of Nicaea was signed, theoretically meant to last for 50 years. Phase 2, the Sicilian disaster, 415 to 413 BCE, when arrogance reached its peak. The Peace of Nicaea was, in reality, a fragile truce. In this climate, a new figure emerged in Athenian politics: Alcibiades. He was an infamous superstar, a young, handsome, brilliant aristocrat with an ambition and an ego so large it could eclipse the sun. Alcibiades persuaded the people of Athens to undertake the most daring and large-scale military expedition ever: an invasion of the wealthy island of Sicily. This plan was the pinnacle of hybris, arrogant overconfidence. The Athenians, even after years of war, believed their power was limitless. In 415 BCE, a massive fleet set sail with great fanfare. But disaster struck from the very beginning. Alcibiades, one of the three commanders, was recalled to Athens to stand trial for a scandal. Fearing a death sentence, he did the unthinkable. He defected to Sparta. Alcibiades betrayed his homeland, revealed the entire Athenian plan, and became the chief strategist for the enemy. In Sicily, the Athenian siege of Syracuse bogged down. The arrival of the Spartan general Gylippus revitalized the Syracusan defense. The Athenian fleet was defeated in a decisive naval battle in the Great Harbor. The Athenian army, trapped on the island, was forced into a desperate retreat on land. Hunted, starving, and exhausted, the entire expeditionary force of tens of thousands of men was annihilated or captured and sold into slavery. The Sicilian disaster was a cataclysmic blow. Athens had bet the entire family fortune on a single, insane hand of cards, and lost everything. The empire began to crumble at its foundations. Phase 3, the Sicilian War, 413 to 404 BCE, the downward spiral. News of the disaster encouraged Athens' allies to revolt. Worse, following Alcibiades' advice, Sparta occupied Thessalia, right in Athenian territory. This fortress became a permanent thorn in Athens' flesh, allowing the Spartans to ravage the countryside year-round. And yet, Athens showed incredible resilience. They used their last reserves to build a new fleet. The war now shifted to the Ionian Sea. Another decisive factor emerged: Persia. The old enemy now became the angel investor, deciding to fund Sparta with glittering gold to build a navy capable of challenging Athens, with the goal of weakening both Greek sides. Amid the chaos, Athenian politics collapsed. Alcibiades, ironically, was recalled by the Athenian fleet to command them, and won several victories. However, Sparta found its own brilliant naval commander, Lysander, a gifted tactician and a shrewd diplomat. The final battle took place in 405 BCE at Aegospotami. The Athenian fleet, through an unbelievably stupid mistake of carelessness and overconfidence, was caught by surprise by Lysander's fleet while beached on the shore. The entire Athenian navy was annihilated. Athens had now lost its final defensive wall. Lysander sailed his fleet to blockade the port of Piraeus. Isolated, with no ships, no allies, and starving, Athens was forced to surrender in 404 BCE. The terms were utterly humiliating. Athens had to tear down its long walls, dissolve its empire, surrender almost its entire fleet, and accept a pro-Spartan puppet government known as the 30 Tyrants. The undying legacy, when everyone loses. The Peloponnesian War ended with a total Spartan victory, but it was a hollow one, like winning a marathon but becoming crippled in both legs at the finish line. The price was the exhaustion of the entire Greek world. Athens, the cultural and political center, was shattered. Sparta, though victorious, lacked the ability and vision to lead a devastated Greece. Its own period of dominance was brief and brutal, leading only to more wars. The general weakening of all the Greek city-states after 27 years of self-slaughter created a power vacuum. That vacuum would eventually be filled by a power from the north, Macedon, under King Philip II and his son, Alexander the Great. The Peloponnesian War is a timeless lesson on the dangers of imperial ambition, the clash of ideologies, and how war can corrupt even the most brilliant of societies. Thanks to the immortal account of Thucydides, it remains a tragic mirror, showing how even a golden age can end in blood and tears, a testament to humanity's spectacular capacity for self-destruction. Thanks for watching.